Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard dance charts in immaculate detail with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. Okay, look, I'm not really expecting this week to really matter long term. It only had a few debuts across the board, and with the likelihood of a decent Millennium album bomb next week alongside Calvin Harris, a lot of these I don't expect will last, and given that there's not really much of quality that debuted this week, I think we can call this week a write-up and let's just move on, because seriously, this was really disappointing. But at least the chart that looks like it's going to get more impact next week had at least a much better week than everywhere else as we move into Hot Dance, where No Broke Boys by Disco Lines and Tinashe is holding really steady at that #1 spot. I don't really see this dying off easily considering the insane streaming boost that this still has. It's going to stick around for a good bit, but at least it's got competition from Dracula by Tame Impala at #2, which is holding remarkably steady on streaming, and with radio being on board with this a lot faster, I can potentially see this going back to #1. We'll have to see how it turns out. But then we've got Let the World Burn by Chris Gray, Rebel and Cry to #3, where it looks like the streaming is just utterly done with this one, and Good Riddance too. I have no reason to ever give this any sort of attention at this point, and given that it's an obvious TikTok bait song, we can move on from this. And it also opens up the door for I Run by Haven featuring Kaylin Aragon at #4, where it looks like the streaming is okay on this one. It's not doing bad. But what continues to baffle me is the continued longevity and success of Victory Lap by Fred Again, Skepta and Clark Boy Max up to #5, where even despite a bunch of new songs from Fred Again that have been doing decently well, including one that also debuted this week thanks to a remix, the Fred Again fans don't want to move on from this one. And look, it's one of the better songs from that rollout in terms of quality, but seriously, there are so many other songs you could have a lot more staying power in, but for some reason this is still here. Come on now. Although again, if the composition is All the Things She Said by Harrison at #6, I think I'll take this as a net positive. And on that note, and not really remotely surprising given its early debut last week, surging into the top 10, Lights Go Out by John Summit. And look, I'm not happy it's at #7. Quite frankly, it's only here because of streaming and decent sales, and I don't expect it will last. And given that John Summit seems to be approaching a similar rollout plan to that of Fred Again with this new album featuring songs that come out on a Wednesday every 2 weeks, which for me is a baffling strategy, and quite frankly we'll have to see how much of them actually end up sticking around. And it's likely that Millennium's going to boot this down too, alongside No Batty Dow by Zakai and Slaughter at #8, where it looks like streaming is somehow still on board with this garbage, and quite frankly I have no idea why this part of the scene has any sort of staying power. We have better funk songs rising right now. There is no reason for this to still be here. Finally, we had 2 songs that refused to move at all. Kind of surprising the first case with Turn the Lights Off by Kato featuring John at #9, where you think that the streaming would be going so far down that it would lose out fast, but it looks like the song is just holding decently on sales, and streaming is okay enough to keep this around. Although it is still somehow beating out I Think I'm Addicted by Oscar Medcave featuring Haley Joel at #10. Again, this one's going to be just fine. Streaming's on board with this. Let's hope it rebounds a little bit next week. And on that note, when we get to our 2 fall-offs this week, I mean, it's an overall net positive because both of them are funk songs that have been long overdue to exit. With Montegame's on Nada by Mozzie, DJ Samir and DJ Harvey 26, and Montegame Meow by Lena, both comfortably locking their year-end list spots for 2026, which is really disappointing. But them leaving is a net positive. I think everyone can agree on that at this point. And unfortunately, and not really surprising at all, our only fall was Scared by Fred Again and Young Thug to 19, where, yes, I'm a little disappointed that this somehow has had no staying power. I thought Young Thug's audience would have kept this around, but given that he's got a new debut that's been long overdue, I think it can kind of make up for it in a way. Although it does suck because alongside the expected surge for Lights Go Out in the top 10, we had the unfortunate but not exactly surprising comeback of Jamaican Bam Bam by Hugo and Salto at 21. Yes, this doesn't really surprise me given that the streaming has been consistently going up even when it left last week, but I was hoping that against all things that this would actually end up flopping, and unfortunately I was dead wrong in that, and I don't understand why we keep keep giving this lazy garbage more traffic. But thankfully, we have one of the admittedly few good debuts here to actually start us off this week, being number 25, OK OK by Fred Again, Danny Brown, Beam, PARISI, and JPEGMAFIA. Nice to actually get a riskier prediction right this time. I was expecting that this would have at least some chance of charting, considering that the original's doing decent numbers as is, and thanks to the big remix by Hamdi, an artist who's been blowing up surprisingly pretty big over the last year, and I'm definitely not going to complain. Yeah, the remix basically allowed this to barely crack onto the bottom of the charts, where both Danny Brown and even the side alias of Fred Again and PARISI are actually able to chart their first ever songs on this chart, although JPEGMAFIA not being in this conversation and instead charting his second charting song after that utterly forgettable collaboration EP with Flume last year. Yeah, that's just bizarre to me on so many levels. I did not expect that he would break his one-hit wonder streak so early. Now with this, it was one of the earliest singles that came out between Talk of the Town and You're a Star, admittedly a weaker period in terms of chart presence, where a lot of those songs unfortunately didn't really chart much at all, but it's now here thanks to a late push with the remix, and yeah, absolutely deserves to be here. This is a great track and I'm really happy it finally crossed over. The darker nocturnal atmosphere is excellent with the boom bass and wailing synths against that really distant sounding horn line that sounds terrific, all against the manic vocals of both JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown, which appear here through samples and are honestly integrated really well, especially alongside the weirder vocal delivery of Beam that admittedly did take a little bit of a while to get used to, but is definitely welcome in this mix. And as I was wishing he would do on Scared, Fred Again even finds room to fit in an acidic techno switch on this one, and proves once again why that genre switch tactic that he's been using absolutely works well for him. This was something I wish that Scared had last week, and I'm really happy that there's a song here to prove my point exactly. Not one of the most immediate singles by any means, but it slowly lingers and builds on you the more time you listen, and given that I initially wasn't huge on this one, the fact that it's turned around to being a really damn good song for me, yeah, that's a sign of how much this really holds up. Oh, and also the Hamdi remix, it's actually surprisingly better. I think that the production gets way harder and more intense there, especially when he goes for more of that signature dubstep sound that Hamdi nails together so well, especially in that menacing and really buzzy synth lead that just sounds fantastic against the UK dubstep production. That remix becoming as big as it did now doesn't really surprise me, and it's considerably better. I wouldn't mind seeing more songs from Hamdi chart off the back of it. And yeah, this song with both versions absolutely works for me. I'm really happy it's here, even if I have no expectations it will last next week thanks to Illenium's album bomb. We could really hope for more quality like this coming forward. So yeah, great track, really glad it's finally here. And sadly, we're back to the norm with dance pop, where we had absolutely no debuts at all, although at least in this case, some things did happen. For one, even despite utterly collapsing on both streaming and sales, Aperture by Harry Styles held steady at number 1, although the distance between it and our number 2 is honestly a lot shorter than I think anyone could have expected. This song might have to really stabilize on streaming to get any sort of longevity, and I can see that happening given the positive reception I've seen from a lot of people. It's not going to die off easy or anything, and that's also funny to mention because lower down you've got cases like the exit of Abracadabra by Lady Gaga, the first song to hit a full year on this chart, and ironically it exits once it has a massive sales and streaming surge thanks to the Grammys. Yeah, really disappointed that it didn't stick around longer, but it's had its run. Oh, and also 1-800 by BB No Money and Iron Mouse is back at 15. This one doesn't really surprise me considering the negative virality that Cry For Me really has. It was going to get some boost off of association, and it's considerably better than that song, so I think we all end up winning here. Hell, that's closely related to dance streaming, where, yes, Aperture by Harry Styles is number 1 here still, doesn't surprise me. But below that, we had the expected natural exit of Takedown by Huntrix at number 10, and, well, Abracadabra by Lady Gaga at 15. It was only here to replace Let the World Burn. That is a net positive. Hell, it's also ironic ironic when you get to dance sales because, I mean, it's there at number 1 as well. It absolutely surged across the board thanks to the Grammys win, and is well deserved of getting at least another week on top, even if I don't expect it will last next week. More interesting is that there's a lot of other slightly smaller movements, especially in our falls, that show some interesting signs and songs exiting naturally. Like say from Huntrix with Takedown at number 8 and How It's Done at number 9, and some utterly mediocre house songs finally leaving with Vision Blurred by Cascade Sid and Anabel Englund at 13, and Jamaican Bam Bam by Hugel and Salto at 14. Not like that matters clearly, for some reason streaming's on board with this. And since Abracadabra was our only jump, and our 2 comebacks are both unsurprising with Your New Morning Alarm by Mark Rebele back yet again at number 5, and Midnight Sun by Zara Larsson at number 12, again it's getting a lot of upwards momentum on the Hot 100, I expected this. That just leaves our 2 debuts, where unfortunately one of them is Lights Go Out by John Summit at number 6. Yeah, not happy about that. And unfortunately, the other one does not look much better, being number 15, XTC by Cloonee and Jocelyn Enriquez. Okay, look, even as someone who likes Clooney's actual genuine hits on Hot Dance, and who even finds Not Gonna Be Your Boo to be one of the better songs that's charting on Mediabase Dance Airplay at the moment, I was really not looking forward to this. And with this being a blatantly obvious remix of Jocelyn Enriquez's song A Little Bit of Ecstasy from the 90s that's already been overexposed in other tracks, I was not exactly looking forward to this at all, especially considering that the style of artist and song that he's going for on this remix just doesn't really make sense with this more minimalistic style of production. And after hearing this, yeah, unfortunately this was not very good at all. I mean, it's not terrible, the bass line's pretty good, and the overall sound of this does remind me of Fisher's more recent material, which has seen a significant increase in quality from, say, Someboy 2024. But I'm sorry, these vocals and the sample in general are just integrated terribly across this song. The mixing makes them feel more amateurish and sloppy than they should be, not helped by the EQ focusing on the mid-ranges that just sounds grainy and utterly unpleasant as they clip the top of the mix. And the entire song just lacks the sort of structural flow to really make this sort of remix actually work. It sounds very clunky. I've seen a few people mention how Clooney's recent sample and melodies integration with these songs just gets more and more questionable as he goes on, which was something that a lot of people pointed towards Not Gonna Be Your Boo as having a big issue in, and after hearing it, I can understand where they're coming from, especially with the melody not exactly matching with everything else there. But in this case, yeah, this is way more blatant and way less interesting for me, and it really did disappoint me a lot. I mean, it's not the worst thing that I've covered this week, but if you want a song with this title that does this way better, look up the song with Solardo and Eli Brown. It's considerably better than this, and with this being so forgettable and mediocre, yeah, not good. But now onto the chart, which I thought would have a little bit of a detrimental shake-up last week, and thankfully we're actually back to being able to do this properly, as it looks like Polestar is maintaining their 50-song charts at the moment, and even if the details on those charts are not exactly as good as they would be on All Access, I'm at least okay with this, and it still has all the information I need, so yeah, this is going to keep going the way it is. But anyways, man, the top 2 was just dominant here and really fine for competition, and it ended up going to Bring Me to Life by Tiesto and Fours at number 1. I mean, I expect this will probably end up being one of the biggest hits on this format this year, considering Tiesto's tactic of slow increases in spins seems to be working pretty well, and given that it's one of his best songs in the last decade, I think we're all better off for it. But Don't Blame Me by James Carter actually put up a really solid fight at number 2, where the only difference between these is one spin. This somehow still has staying power. Pretty good. But onto the song I probably expect will be number 1 next week, I Run by Haven featuring Caitlin Arrogant at number 3. It's rising pretty steadily on spins, doing decently well there. It's a pretty obvious smash hit in the making on this chart, and yeah, I'm not exactly upset about it. It has grown back on me a pretty considerable amount. And all of these quite comfortably Strand Dancer by Cascade at number 4, although given that Cascade has a much worse song debuting this week, expect the spins on this one to utterly nosedive, and yeah, it's not exactly a better thing in the long run, I'll say that. Then there's Phases by Joel Corey and Abby Flynn at number 5. Honestly, I'm surprised that this is still sticking around this well in the top 10, let alone the top 5. I thought this would have stalled out pretty fast, especially when you get beneath it and you have a lot of songs surging into the top 10 thanks to the utter collapse of some pretty big songs this week, which unfortunately opens up the door for Love You for Life by Loud Luxury and Emily Roberts at number 6. Again, it's not even the worst song that Loud Luxury has charted recently, but seriously, can we just all agree that this being in here instead of Uh-Oh is just an utter downgrade across the board? This song is not good. We don't need to keep these guys in the top 10 at this point. And on that note, What Love Can Do by Bonnie and Clyde at number 7. I mean, it's still gaining momentum. It's a little bit better of a song, but not remotely interesting or justified in being here at all. But now on to 3 considerably better songs that all absolutely surged into the top 10 with a ton of upwards momentum, and especially with the first one, Midnight Sun by Zara Larsson at number 8, which surged all the way from 22 last week with the sort of triple-digit momentum in spins where I can see this being an obvious number 1 hit. And given the quality of this track, I think we're all better off for this being here. Really nice to see more pop crossovers onto this shove from Zara Larsson. She's definitely been overdue them. Hell, there's also Faded by Hayla and Nelly Furtado at number 9. A massive positive for me. I'm really happy that this is still gaining momentum, even if I didn't really see this having a chance of getting into the top 10. I'm pleasantly surprised it actually did. Finally, Edge of Desire by Jonas Blue and Maliv at number 10. And there is absolutely no reason why this shouldn't be on Hot Dance at this point. It's still gaining upwards momentum on streaming, and given that the industry seems to be backing it way more, yeah, that's at least something done right with this song. It is still really good. And again, it's important to note all of these massive jumps into the top 10 because the falls and fall-offs were just a complete mess of considerably big tracks that I had no expectations would fall off this fast. And ironically, all 5 of our fall-offs are notable songs in their own right. Gone, Gone, Gone by David Guetta, Tay Swims and Tones and I, man, that song had absolutely no staying power at all. Two Hands by GT Office, Marshall Simon and Matthew Topper. Nobody Make Me Feel by Oscar Medkay and Khalid. Forever by Elenium, Tom Grennan and Alna, ironic that this is exiting now. And Sophia by Vons, the only song of this lot that I can see getting caught between years, and considering that it's by far the worst of them, while the rest are pretty solid and easily making the year-end list again for 2026, yeah, this is a huge win for me. And if you thought those fall-offs were rough, again, the falls were also some pretty considerably big songs losing out hard, hence why there are a lot of jumps into the top 10 this week. I mean, the only exception really is, unfortunately, Dopamine by Robin at 40. I mean, at this point, I feel like they should push Talk to Me as a single into this format. It would make sense considering that this isn't really performing as well as they expected here. But the rest, Cry For You 2025 by Side Piece crashing to 11, Come Find Me by MK featuring Clementine Douglas at 15, What If It Takes You Away by Will Satz featuring Baloo down hard at 25, Set Me Free by Armin van Buuren and Sasha at 27, and Crazy by Miles Lloyd and Buns at 28. Jesus Christ. But if you want a sign of just how much these matter, let's look at our jumps and comebacks, where we had 13 jumps this week, and even a comeback for Man I Need by Olivia Dean at 48. Pretty nice to see this back, even if I don't expect it to really last. So let's start this off by spreading these out a little bit, starting with some pop crossovers alongside Midnight Sun in the top 10, like Where's My Husband by Ray at 18, and even Aperture by Harry Styles surging off its debut to 29 to the shock of absolutely nobody. And on that note of debuts and returns surging from last week, we had Are You by Ethan Capps and Katrina Wolverton at 42, All the Things She Said by Harrison at 37, Sun Shines on Me by Armin van Buuren and Glockenbach at 35, and even Immortal Steve Aoki remix by Two Lots and Aloe Black at 34. Yeah, I'm shocked about that one too. I know Steve Aoki is a big name on this format, but this surging makes no sense to me. But then you've got the rest outside of Love You for Life and Edge of Desire in the top 10, and they were pretty much all over the place this week. Kissing My Friend Friends by Marshmello and Inji is still somehow gaining a 19. Same deal with Strangers by Two Pilots, Artemis and James Hersey at 24. Pull Me Closer by DJ Pauly D is somehow still here at 32 and gaining momentum late into its run. I'm not going to complain about that. And unfortunately, the rebound of Call You Back by Leighton Jordani and Genesee featuring Bino Rain at 33. I'm expecting it's only because of the songs above it losing out hard, because seriously, this has no reason still gaining momentum. I really hope it doesn't last. And on that note of disappointment, we move over to Dance Mix Show Airplay by Billboard charts, where outside of the welcome debut of Out of My Body by Anima featuring EJ at 36, the big unwelcome and really frustrating story is the debut of YUKON by Justin Bieber at 34. Now this one is extremely lucky that two of the debuts on Mediabase this week were even worse somehow, because seriously, this is the sort of goopy mess with horrible pitch shifted vocals and production that sounds like you're being smeared in butter with some of the most ugly sounding Simpson production I've heard in recent memory, all against some utterly unconvincing vocals where Justin Bieber's lack of personality is not hidden by the pitch shifting and the already meme line of "I pull up like Jimmy Neutron, I can help you get a move on like U-Haul," which is just a terrible line and proof that this song was written very lazily and very half-assed. And if it wasn't for a halfway okay atmosphere, yeah, this would have been amongst the worst here. Thank God I don't get to cover it in full though. It's not good at all. And on the note of not good, we get to our sole debut on Mediabase that I've already covered, unfortunately being Vision Blurred by Cascade Sid and Anabel Englund at 41. This doesn't remotely surprise me given the names involved, all of which are huge dance airplay staples, but when the song is this lousy and this crap, I can only hope that it stalls out fast. We really don't need this being a hit here either. And on that note of garbage, our three other debuts, starting off with one particularly frustrating case in number 50, Promises by Dubs and Badger. Okay, seriously, can we fucking stop with this? This is getting ridiculous now. I get that Dubs had a run years ago, but seriously, between the utterly atrocious sexual assault charge, which may I remind you was settled out of court for money, which indicates some form of guilt, and the music going to utter crap in the 2020s, I mean seriously, why the hell do we still keep them around? Let alone a collaboration with another act that's utterly destroyed any sort of goodwill for me, and I already didn't have a lot to begin with given their horrible remix of These Words by Natasha Bedingfield. And considering how much I absolutely could not stand Move a Little Closer from last year, I was dreading this one even more, and good to expect that because this is somehow even worse. This is atrocious. And in the grand tradition of Dubs being utterly derivative of other acts these days, this feels like it's taking notes wholesale from Lazera with the utterly annoying pitch-shifted vocals that grated on my nerves in record time against the really fast house tempo that just sounds completely lacking in any sort of groove, not helped by the drops being utterly weak and forgettable in terms of production and sound, and having next to no bass to speak of. These are not how you produce drops properly. These guys should know this at this point. And at this point, it just proves to me that all the names involved in this song just completely lost all sort of interesting production choices a long time ago. The blending of the pitch-shifted vocals is so bad where the backing cooing tones actually end up being at the same volume as the vocals themselves, which makes no sense to me. The mid-frequencies are so tinny and increasingly clunky, and they remove any sort of genuine atmosphere that this actually goes for. And when the drops are so weak with once again no bass to speak of and this weird buzzing sounding fart that's really audible at just the right level to utterly annoy me, yeah, this is produced like garbage. It's clearly proof that Dubs had more of a hand in producing this than Badger did, and quite frankly, when their production quality has gone to utter crap over this last decade, I'm not exactly gonna call that a good thing by any means. Yeah, this utterly sucks. Let's do what Dance Radio clearly doesn't want to do and move on from this garbage. Skip the hell out of this. Number 49, You and Me by LouCii and Rackelle. Topic of acts that that we should stop platforming. Okay, seriously, this is getting ridiculous at this point. For those of you who forgot, LouCii was behind that utterly atrocious, likely AI-produced garbage track All Night that charted briefly last year, and a song that quite frankly was amongst the worst of the charting songs from 2025. I have no idea why it had even a decent run. And given that a higher power pretty much intervened and that song flopped considerably, I thought we would never hear from this guy again. And yet for some ungodly reason, because Dance Radio really wants to embrace their finding of new acts, this ended up charting and giving him a second song on this chart. Really? And once again, we're dealing with a song with a really obviously fake artwork that's borderline AI generated, and unsurprisingly the song is utter garbage as well. I mean seriously, even if it's not noticeably AI produced this time, which is at least some fucking upgrade, low bar there, we also have to deal with a stiff, badly produced house beat that has next to no atmosphere whatsoever, and that's alongside the utterly generic vocals of Rackelle, who ironically also has an AI generated About Me page, even if yes, she has appeared on other songs from LouCii in the past. Although given the moral bankruptcy of this guy, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a fake name to make him get more money, because seriously, he's not above garbage like this. And seriously, I feel like one time is just completely wasted listening to this basic ass garbage, and quite frankly, Dance Radio platforming this over actual producers with talent proves that they're significantly behind the times even now. And yes, it's not AI generated like All Night was, or at least appears to not be, but that should not be the baseline of quality for this utterly forgettable trash. This has no reason being on this chart. I hope it continues to flop just like All Night did. We could really use this not being here. Skip this garbage too. And finally, number 47, Belong to Me by Anabel Englund and Kamino.
Make a move, eyes on you, give you pleasure, you remember when you say.
Dire times when I'm expecting another Anabel Englund tech house song to actually end up sticking around and being one of the few good things of these debuts this week, especially considering how much Vision Blurred utterly disappointed me with all the names involved in that track who are considerably better than it. Although in this case I was at least a little bit more interested, considering it's another collaboration with an artist that's released on catch and release just like Sid, and seems to be a lot better of an artist on that format. And thank God this actually turned out considerably better. Hell, it's actually pretty damn good. I don't mind it. Anabel Englund has a sort of subtlety in her vocals to actually play off this production really well, where it's a lot more smoother and darker in terms of atmosphere compared to Vision Blurred. And for a song this blunt in the content, where it's about that desire to get this guy to belong to her as they hook up on the dance floor, all against the sleeker and much darker instrumentation, it honestly works really well as a dance floor filling track. I can get why Dance Radio was on board with this one too. With the darker growling synths and that steady progression, that honestly reminds me of some of Fisher's best tracks like Take It Off or Yeah the Girls, all building into much more melodic drops at the very end with some blaring synths that sound fantastic. This honestly really works for me. And given that this is on Ultra Records alongside Kamino being a much more consistently good producer from catch and release, it honestly comes together with a sort of mixing and mastering job that really does work wonders here. I absolutely get why people are on board with this. It's honestly really impressive. Really good stuff. I wouldn't mind if it actually stuck around. Although, man, this is a much more positive note than anything this week utterly deserved, because, man, this was rough. I'm honestly surprised to say this, but for Best of the Week, even though Fred Again was really close, I think it's going to go to Belong to Me by Anabel Englund and Kamino. Call it a mix of disappointment from last week building into a much better song this time around, but honestly, I can see myself returning to this quite a bit. It's a really damn good song. Shame that the rest of the debuts outside of those two just utterly blew ass this week. And you know what? I'm going to give a tie for Worst of the Week between Promises by Badger and Dubs, because seriously, that production is atrocious. There's no excuse there. And You and Me by LouCii and Rackelle, because seriously, there is no reason why this guy deserves to have a second charge song. He's terrible on All Night and he's somehow just as bad here. Next week, my god, I hope the quality increases, and thanks to the fact that we'll have Calvin Harris alongside likely a few tracks from Millennium charting, I think we'll be back to a much better streak than we had this week, or at least I goddamn hope so. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.